When Michael finally moves into his dream home, he expects peace and quiet. Instead, he finds himself in a ruthless war with Janet, the power-hungry HOA president who will stop at nothing to kick him out, even if it means breaking the law. As Janet's schemes spiral out of control, Michael uncovers shocking secrets and fights back with a bold plan to take her down. But will it be enough to end her reign of terror? Stick around to find out how this epic battle unfolds. Moving into my new house was supposed to be the start of something beautiful. I had busted my ass for years, working double shifts, saving every penny, and finally I did it. I bought my dream home. A stunning, modern property nestled in a quiet, upscale community. The kind of neighborhood where people sip coffee on their porches, wave to passing joggers, and pride themselves on perfectly manicured lawns. It was paradise, or so I thought. Little did I know, my quiet piece of heaven was about to turn into a living hell. The very first morning after moving in, I woke up to the sun streaming through my bedroom window and felt a sense of pride. This was mine. I patted down to the front door to grab the newspaper, still in my pajamas but frozen confusion. A crisp white envelope was taped to the door, screaming, HOA violation notice in bold, unfriendly letters. I tore it open, half expecting it to be a mistake. But nope, apparently my single stylish porch chair was deemed unsightly and in violation of community standards. I glanced over at the chair, sleek, modern, and matching the house perfectly. Was this some kind of joke? That's when I saw her. A woman across the street, arms crossed, lips pursed, glaring at me with a disdain that could melt steel. She looked to be in her late 50s, meticulously dressed like she was attending a garden party, even at 7 in the morning. Her posture screamed superiority, and I couldn't help but chuckle at how seriously she seemed to be taking this. I waved, trying to be neighborly. "Morning," I called out. Her eyes narrowed as she stomped across the street like she owned the whole damn neighborhood. "You need to remove that chair," she barked without even a hint of greeting. I blinked at her in confusion. Excuse me? It doesn't match community standards," she huffed, tilting her chin up like some kind of HOA queen. "We don't allow unsightly furniture ruining the aesthetic." I couldn't help but look at the chair again. "Ma'am, it's just a chair. It matches the house and—" "It's not approved," she snapped, cutting me off. "Neither is your house, actually." Now that caught me off guard. "My house?" She smirked like she just caught me stealing from the neighborhood bake sale. "We weren't informed of a new tenant. Did the previous owner get this purchase approved by the board?" It hit me then. She thought I was a renter, someone she could easily intimidate. I couldn't resist playing along just to see where she was going with this. "I don't think the owner needed to check in with you," I said slowly. Her smile widened, teeth glinting in the morning light. "Oh, but they do. We have strict policies about who can live here. If the homeowner didn't get this approved, I'm afraid I'll have to start the eviction process." I bit back a laugh, twirling my keys around my finger. "Oh, really? That's great to hear because I'm not a renter. I'm the new owner." Her whole face fell apart. Confidence shattered. She actually looked like she might faint. "You bought this house?" "Yep," I said with a wide grin. "Paid in full, signed, sealed, delivered." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then, as if flicking a switch, she plastered on the fakest smile I had ever seen. "Well," she cooed, sugary sweet, "welcome to the neighborhood. I'm Janet, president of the HOA. If you need anything, you can come to me." "Good to know," I replied, and without waiting for more of her fake kindness, I shut the door. I thought that was it, a weird but manageable interaction. But no, that was just the beginning of the nightmare. Over the next few days, more and more violation notices started appearing on my door, like some kind of sick prank. One for my porch light being too bright, another for my trash bins being visible from the street, even though it was trash day. Then there was a note about my car being parked in my own driveway, and that one genuinely pissed me off. It was like Janet had declared war, and I was her prime target. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I started noticing little things that made my blood boil. Grass clippings mysteriously scattered on my driveway after I just swept it. My mailbox being knocked slightly crooked. The feeling of being watched every time I stepped outside. Janet was everywhere, prowling the street like a hawk, eyeing every move I made. One evening, Mark, the neighbor from 2 doors down, wandered over while I was washing my car. He was holding a cup of coffee, looking like he'd seen this show before. "You've pissed off Queen Janet," he said with a chuckle. "She's been running around all morning talking to the board members. She's out for blood." "Let her try," I scoffed. "I own the damn place." Mark leaned against the fence, eyes glinting with mischief. "Does she know you own more than just this place?" I smirked. "Not yet." We both laughed, but something about the way Janet moved in the shadows that night made me uneasy. This wasn't just about a chair or some stupid aesthetic rule. Janet didn't just want control. She wanted obedience. She wanted everyone to fear her, to bow to her petty tyranny, but she had picked the wrong guy to mess with. I wasn't just some pushover. I'd worked too hard for this dream, and I sure as hell wasn't about to let some self-righteous, power-hungry HOA dictator tear it down. What I didn't know was just how far Janet was willing to go to get rid of me. And as the war escalated, I started realizing that this was more than just a personal vendetta. It was about dominance. Janet didn't care about rules or order. She cared about her throne, and I had just challenged it without even knowing the stakes. The problem was, Janet didn't know I had more power than she ever imagined. I just needed to play my cards right, and when the time came, I'd make sure her little empire crumbled to dust. The next morning, I woke up to another HOA violation notice taped to my door. This one was different, longer, more official looking, with bold lettering demanding my presence at an HOA hearing to address multiple and ongoing violations. The list included the same nonsense as before: porch light too bright, trash bins visible on pickup day, and something new: disruptive deliveries causing community disturbance. Apparently, my Amazon packages were offensive to the neighborhood aesthetic. I shook my head, crumpling the paper in frustration. Just as I tossed it on the kitchen counter, my phone buzzed. It was Mark, calling way earlier than usual. "Dude," he whispered, sounding way too amused, "Janet's at it again. She's out there rallying the troops, going door to door, collecting signatures for your eviction. Apparently, she's convinced a few board members that you're a public nuisance." I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to rein in the irritation boiling in my chest. "She's what?" "Yeah, man. She's pulling out all the stops. Word on the street is she's trying to amend the HOA bylaws just to get you kicked out, like rewriting the rules entirely." I couldn't help but laugh. "She's rewriting the rules because I bought a damn chair?" Mark chuckled. "Apparently, but she's got some of the more spineless board members wrapped around her finger. You might want to show up to that hearing tomorrow. It's going to be a circus." I thanked Mark and hung up, thinking about my next move. Janet was clearly spiraling out of control, but the fact that she had influence over some of the HOA board members made things trickier. It wasn't just about fighting one power-hungry woman. It was about cutting down her entire support network. The following day, I walked into the HOA meeting hall, a bland room in the community center with beige walls and those uncomfortable folding chairs. To my surprise, the place was packed. Neighbors who usually stayed inside were suddenly eager to witness the drama unfold. At the long conference table sat Janet, flanked by her loyal cronies from the board. Greg, the HOA vice president, looked more exhausted than usual, like he'd rather be anywhere else. Janet's face lit up with that fake, condescending smile as I walked in. "Oh, you decided to show up," she sneered. "How brave." I didn't rise to the bait, just took my seat across from her, folding my hands on the table. Greg cleared his throat, already looking defeated. "All right, let's get this over with," he muttered. Janet launched into her tirade, stacking papers in front of her like they were sacred texts. "As you all know," she began, addressing the room like a queen addressing her subjects, "we have a responsibility to maintain the harmony and aesthetic of our community. Unfortunately, some individuals do not respect these standards. The resident at 217 Maple Drive," she shot me a glare, "has repeatedly violated community guidelines, disregarded aesthetic standards, and created a disruptive environment." She started flipping through her pile of evidence, showing blown-up photos of my trash bins, on trash day, my perfectly reasonable porch light, and a package from Amazon that had been sitting on my steps for all of an hour. People in the audience whispered, clearly baffled by the absurdity of it all. But Janet wasn't done. This kind of negligence lowers property values and ruins the harmony we strive to maintain. Therefore, I am calling for a formal eviction vote, as the homeowner's presence has proven detrimental to our community. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely impressed by her audacity. Eviction? I asked, my tone incredulous. For what exactly? Owning a modern chair? Getting deliveries? Following trash regulations? Her nostrils flared, but she maintained her icy composure. You are consistently disruptive, and we must uphold the integrity of the community. Greg sighed, cutting in. Janet, you can't evict someone just because you don't like their porch chair or that they receive packages. We're overstepping here. Her face flushed with indignation. It's not just that. It's his blatant disregard for the rules. I leaned forward, letting the room go silent before speaking. Actually, Janet, I think you're the one disregarding the rules. I've done some research of my own. I opened my folder and pulled out my own stack of documents, dropping them on the table, including these, photos and statements from neighbors, proving that you have repeatedly violated HOA regulations. Leaving your trash bins out overnight? Check. Parking your car on the street instead of your driveway? Check. Unauthorized modifications to your backyard patio? Big check. Her face blanched, and I could see the board members exchanging nervous glances. Greg took one of my papers, reading it over with his eyebrows raised. Is this accurate, Janet? He asked, his tone sharper now. She sputtered, eyes darting like a trapped animal. That's not relevant. Oh, it's very relevant, I said, leaning back with a satisfied smile. Because as the HOA president, you should be the first to follow the rules, right? But it gets worse. Your little eviction order? Completely fraudulent. I spoke to my lawyer. You didn't go through any of the proper channels, and several board members' signatures are faked. The air in the room changed. Cold, tense, like the collective realization that Janet had screwed up royally. Greg looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Janet, he said firmly, if this is true, you've grossly abused your position. Janet was visibly trembling now, the bravado shattered. It's not, I was trying to preserve the community standards. It sounds to me like you were trying to bully a homeowner because you didn't approve of his taste, Greg shot back. This meeting is over. Janet, we'll be discussing your position on the board. As I stood to leave, Janet lunged forward, desperate to salvage her image. This isn't over, she hissed, eyes blazing with humiliation. I'll find another way. You haven't seen the last of me. I just smiled, giving her a small nod. Looking forward to it. Walking out of that room, I felt like I just won a heavyweight fight. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Janet wasn't the type to back down. She'd come back swinging harder than before. What I didn't know at the time was just how far she was willing to go, and how much damage she was prepared to cause before this war was over. The calm didn't last long. Barely a week had passed since the showdown at the HOA meeting when strange things started happening. It was subtle at first. My mailbox was smashed in, my car tires mysteriously flattened overnight. I chalked it up to some random vandalism, but when I installed a security camera on the front porch, the footage showed Janet, in the dead of night, wielding a crowbar and hacking away at my mailbox. I took the footage straight to the police, and they didn't waste time slapping her with vandalism charges. I thought that would be the end of it, finally, but I severely underestimated just how vindictive Janet could be. She bailed herself out the same day and immediately started spreading rumors that I had fabricated the video, even going so far as to accuse me of hacking the footage to frame her. Her friends on the board backed her up, insisting she was being unfairly targeted and that I was the real threat to the neighborhood. Then came the lawsuit. Janet filed a civil suit against me for defamation of character and emotional distress, claiming that my doctored footage and baseless accusations had ruined her reputation and caused her immense mental suffering. She pulled every string, hired a high-powered attorney who was all too eager to crush me in court, and whipped up enough of a frenzy that some neighbors even started giving me dirty looks as if I were some kind of con artist. My lawyer assured me the case was laughably weak, But that didn't stop Janet from plastering the neighborhood with flyers labeling me a dangerous manipulator and warning everyone to avoid contact with me. Mark dropped by one evening, visibly pissed off, holding one of those ridiculous flyers. "She's out of her mind," he muttered, crumpling it up. "She's even got some people believing her crap. You're going to need to go public with your side before it spirals." I nodded, realizing he was right. If I didn't take control of the narrative, Janet would poison the entire community against me. I decided to host a neighborhood meeting on my own lawn, inviting everyone to come hear the truth. I didn't want to play dirty, but I couldn't just sit back and let her destroy my life. The night of the meeting, people showed up hesitantly, some of them whispering to each other while glancing suspiciously in my direction. Janet didn't bother showing up, probably thinking her influence was enough to keep people from hearing me out. I took a deep breath and addressed the group. "First off," I began, "I want to apologize if any of you have been made uncomfortable by the recent drama. That was never my intention. But I think it's time to clear the air." I set up a projector and played the security footage of Janet vandalizing my property. Gas rippled through the crowd as they watched Janet take a crowbar to my mailbox, her face unmistakably clear in the recording. I followed up with documentation of the fraudulent eviction notice, as well as statements from other residents who had witnessed her harassment firsthand. "I didn't move here to make enemies," I continued. "I worked hard to afford this home, just like the rest of you. But I won't let anyone bully me or break the law to get their way." People started murmuring, and a few even approached me afterward to apologize for believing Janet's lies. I was feeling more hopeful than I had in weeks, until I saw blue and red lights flashing down the street. A squad car pulled up, and an officer stepped out. "Sir, we've received a report that you're holding an illegal gathering and disturbing the peace," he said firmly. I was stunned. "What? This is my property. I'm just talking to my neighbors." Before I could say more, Janet appeared on the sidewalk, dramatically pointing at me. "Officer, he's threatening us. This whole meeting is just an intimidation tactic to scare us into submission." The cop glanced between us, clearly confused. I held up my phone, replaying the footage again. "She vandalized my property. I have it all on video. This is just another stunt." The officer took a closer look at the video, his frown deepening. "Ma'am, I think you need to step back," he said to Janet. But she wasn't done. She started screaming about how I was terrorizing the community and that I'd bribed the cops to turn a blind eye. Just as things were escalating, Greg arrived, having heard about the meeting from Mark. He immediately stepped in to de-escalate the situation. "Officer," Greg addressed calmly, "I'm the HOA vice president. I can vouch that this meeting was peaceful, and Janet is overstepping her authority again. We've had multiple complaints about her harassment and manipulation. She's the one causing disturbances." Janet's face turned crimson, and for once, she was speechless. The officer gave her a stern warning about filing false reports and told her to head home. As she retreated defeated, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. The neighbors who stayed gave me supportive nods and reassured me they were on my side now that they knew the truth. It felt like the tide was finally turning, but I still knew better than to assume it was over. Janet wasn't just a bully, she was relentless, and now that her influence was crumbling, I could feel the storm brewing on the horizon. Later that night, I checked my mailbox, miraculously still intact, and found yet another letter from the HOA. This one was different. It was an official summons for a private hearing regarding Janet's conduct as HOA president. Apparently, the board was finally taking my evidence seriously, and Greg was pushing to have her removed from power. The next morning, Mark came by with a big grin on his face. "You really got her riled up now. Word's spreading that half the board's ready to kick her out. She's furious." "Good," I replied, still feeling cautious. "But knowing her, she's not going to go down without one hell of a fight." Mark laughed. "Oh, she'll try. But this time she's backed into a corner, and I'll make sure to be there to watch it go down." Despite the small victory, I couldn't shake the feeling that Janet was planning something desperate. She wasn't the type to surrender, not when her pride and power were on the line. If she couldn't control the board, she'd probably find another way to get back at me. I just had to be ready for whatever chaos she stirred up next. The day of the HOA hearing arrived, and the atmosphere around the community center was electric. Word had spread like wildfire, and the room was packed with residents, many of whom looked eager to witness the final downfall of Queen Janet. I stood near the entrance with Mark, who handed me a cup of coffee with a smirk. "She's gonna put on one hell of a show," he muttered. I nodded, keeping my eyes peeled for Janet. She hadn't been seen much since the last fiasco, but I knew she wouldn't go down without a final blaze of glory. Greg was already inside, getting the room organized, looking like he'd aged 10 years since this whole mess started. Just as the meeting was about to start, Janet stormed in, dressed to the nines as if preparing for a corporate battle. Her eyes swept the room, and when she spotted me, her lips curled into a thin, venomous smile. I didn't react, just sipped my coffee, determined not to let her rattle me. Greg called the meeting to order, his voice carrying over the buzzing crowd. "All right, everyone. We're here today to address serious concerns regarding the conduct of HOA President Janet Roberts. This is an official hearing to determine her continued leadership and address the numerous complaints filed against her." Janet immediately shot up from her chair, not even waiting for permission to speak. "I demand to know why I am being persecuted in my own community. This is nothing but a witch hunt instigated by a troublemaker who has no respect for our neighborhood standards." Greg held up a hand to silence her. "You will get your chance to speak, Janet. For now, we're going to hear from the affected residents. First, Michael will present his case." I stepped forward, maintaining a calm, measured tone. "I moved into this community because I love the atmosphere, the peace, and the sense of pride. That was all shattered within days when Janet began targeting me with baseless violation notices. It started with a simple porch chair and escalated into full-blown harassment. I presented the vandalism footage on a projector, complete with timestamps, showing Janet smashing my mailbox. There was a collective gasp from the audience. Janet jumped up again, face red as a beet. "That video is fake. He doctored it to frame me." I didn't flinch. "I also have copies of the false eviction notice you sent me, which bypassed HOA protocol, as well as affidavits from other residents who witnessed your constant harassment and witnessed your blatant disregard for the community guidelines you claim to uphold." Greg gave Janet a pointed look, then gestured to one of the board members. "We also received legal confirmation from Michael's attorney that the eviction order you attempted to enforce was forged. Janet, this is a serious violation of both HOA policy and the law." Janet's eyes darted around like a cornered animal. "I was protecting the community. Someone had to maintain order while that man disrupted everything with his disrespect and disregard." Greg didn't buy it. He motioned for other residents to speak up, and to my surprise, several did. A few brave souls shared their stories of being threatened or fined by Janet over trivial things: flower colors, wind chimes, even holiday decorations. Janet's face grew paler with every new account, her grip on the chair's arm tightening as reality sank in. But the final blow came from Mrs. Hanson, one of the oldest residents, who stood up slowly, her cane tapping against the floor. "Janet, I have lived in this community longer than you have been alive. We voted you in because we trusted you to care for our neighborhood, not to terrorize it. You've overstepped, dear. You have become what you always claimed to fight against, a tyrant." Silence fell over the room. Janet looked like she was ready to explode, but there was nothing left to say. The board members exchanged glances and Greg cleared his throat. "As vice president, I move to call a vote of no confidence against Janet Roberts as HOA president. All in favor?" Hands shot up around the room. Even some of her closest supporters, now faced with undeniable evidence and the collective outrage of the community, hesitated before reluctantly raising their hands. Janet's eyes were wide, disbelieving, her mouth hanging open as if trying to form some final defense. Greg didn't wait. "The motion passes. Janet Roberts is hereby removed from her position as HOA president, effective immediately." A murmur of relief swept through the room. Janet was still frozen, her entire face a portrait of shock and humiliation. She tried to stammer out a protest, but Greg cut her off. "Please leave the premises, Janet. Your behavior will be reviewed by the HOA Council, and further actions will be taken as necessary." Janet stormed out, slamming the door behind her. A few of her former allies hurried after her, probably trying to save face. As the dust settled, Greg approached me with a tired smile. "You did good, Michael. You handled this with more patience than most would have. I nodded, finally letting the tension ease out of my shoulders. Just glad it's over. Mark slapped me on the back, grinning like a proud older brother. Victory, man. You sent the dragon packing. You know she'll put that house up for sale by tomorrow. And he was right. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee on the porch, a for sale sign appeared on Janet's lawn. A sense of peace washed over me as I realized I could finally relax and enjoy the home I had worked so hard to earn. But as days passed and life in the neighborhood slowly returned to normal, I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease. Janet wasn't one to simply give up. I caught glimpses of her talking heatedly to a man in a suit outside her house. Rumor had it she was considering filing a wrongful termination lawsuit against the HOA and possibly even me. It didn't matter. I knew the truth was on my side, and I was done letting her dominate my life. The neighborhood felt lighter, freer, like everyone could finally breathe again. A few weeks later, Mark dropped by with some news. Heard Janet moved out last night. Did it all under cover of darkness, like some kind of exile. I just nodded. Guess that's the end of it. But as I glanced at her now vacant house, I couldn't help but wonder, what happens when someone like Janet loses everything they've fought so ruthlessly to control? Was she really gone for good, or just plotting a new way to come back from the ashes? I shrugged off the thought, deciding that whatever came next, I'd be ready for it. Sometimes standing up to bullies means facing more than just one battle. It's a war of endurance, and as long as I kept fighting back, I knew I'd win. As the sun set over the quiet, peaceful neighborhood, I finally allowed myself to breathe easy. For now, the nightmare was over. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, Janet was still plotting her next move. I wasn't worried. Let her try. I was done being afraid.